Hey everyone, welcome back to the Anti Optimist Therapist, where optimism and realism coexist. Today's episode is called Why It Hurts to Care. Let's start with a quote from one of my favorite books, A Liberated Mind. If you didn't care, it wouldn't hurt. And from another book I love, Act Questions and Answers. Shame and anxiety show up most around what you value deeply. Let that land for a second. Most of us assume pain is a red flag, a stop sign. Stop talking, stop trying, stop caring. We see pain as a threat, something to get rid of. But what if it's something else? What if pain is a compass? That pang of jealousy you try to push down. Maybe it means you long for more connection. The twist in your gut before you take a big leap. Maybe it means you're stepping into something meaningful. That shame spiral after a big mistake. It might be tangled up in your deepest values, not because you're weak, but because you care. Pain is the price of caring, and caring is the path to meaning. But we rarely frame it that way. There's a metaphor often used in acceptance and commitment therapy. Pain is like a splinter. When it's just under the skin, even the gentlest brush can hurt. It makes you flinch. But that pain, it's not proof that you're broken. It's proof there's something alive underneath. And values are a lot like that too. They live just under the skin, close enough to hurt. So when you feel rejected, unseen, or fall short of your own standards, you feel it. Not because you failed, but because something matters. When I think about this, I remember myself as a little kid, playing outside, climbing trees, and wooden fences. Barefoot and scraped up with dirt under my fingernails and at least one splinter in my hand. I hated getting them removed. My dad would bring out his tiny Swiss Army knife and try to dig them out gently, but I couldn't stand it. I'd squirm and pull away, insisting I was just fine. So sometimes I'd just leave it in, and it would throb for days, swelling up, turning red, making everything harder. All because I didn't want to deal with the discomfort of digging it out. Avoiding pain doesn't make it go away. It just makes it harder to move freely. It's the same with emotional pain. The more we ignore it, the deeper it burrows. The presence of pain isn't the problem. It's an invitation to look more closely at what we care about. We all say we want a meaningful life, but meaning doesn't come cheap. To love deeply is to risk loss. To stand for something is to invite criticism. To create is to expose yourself. To try is to fail. To hope is to hurt. To care is to ache. You can't actually have one without the other. Look at Malala. I can't pronounce Malala's last name, guys. I'll admit it. She didn't set out to be a symbol. She just loved to read. She loved to learn. And when that was threatened, she didn't back down. Her voice came through pain, not in spite of it, but because of it. The same with Oprah. Her story didn't start on a soundstage. It started in trauma, poverty, abuse, invisibility. And she didn't numb it. She didn't hide from it. She turned her wound into a window, a way to understand others. She gave people permission to be real. And here's what she said. Turn your wounds into wisdom. That only works if you're willing to feel the wound in the first place. I want to share something personal. Several years ago, something happened that cracked my life open. I won't go into the details, but I was assaulted. At the time, I was working as a therapist in prison, doing work with men and women who had committed sexual offenses. That made what happened to me extra difficult, I would say. I remember staring at a wall for days, not knowing how to eat or speak or move normally. I kept wondering, can I go back to work? Can I do the same work? How am I supposed to sit across from those clients again when I don't even feel like a steady person anymore? It all felt impossible, but somewhere inside me, there was still a thread of caring. Frayed, almost gone, and it hadn't snapped, and strangely, it gave me more capacity in a lot of ways, not less. Doesn't mean any of it was easy. There's still big challenges with it. but it gave me more clarity, more compassion, more willingness to see nuance. It didn't erase the pain, but it clarified the values that had been there all along. There's this old saying, the burned hand teaches best. But you know what? That same hand will often reach for the fire again. Why? Because the fire is also where the heat is. The warmth, the light, the life. That's the paradox of being human. We move toward what matters, even when it hurts. We love again after heartbreak, speak up again after being silenced, try again after failure, because the alternative is numbness, and we weren't made for that. And some of the most courageous people in history knew exactly what that kind of pain felt like. Harriet Tubman was somebody that was born into slavery. She experienced brutal beatings, illness, and the constant fear of being sold or separated from her family. Eventually, she escaped, and she could have stopped there. She could have lived a quiet life, but she didn't. Instead, she became a conductor on the Underground Railroad, risking her life again and again to lead dozens of enslaved people to freedom. She once said, "I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger." And what we don't always talk about is the toll that took on her. Tubman lived with chronic pain and seizures from a head injury she sustained when she was young. She was pursued, hunted. She lived in service to others, knowing that her freedom didn't mean much unless she could help others find theirs. She didn't risk everything because it was easy. She did it because she cared so deeply she couldn't not act. Mother Teresa is remembered for her gentleness and grace. She cared for the poor, the dying, and the forgotten in the streets of Calcutta. She created homes for people with AIDS, leprosy, and tuberculosis, people that the world had frankly discarded. But behind the public image was a woman who suffered in silence. For nearly 50 years, she wrote in private letters about a deep spiritual darkness. She felt distant from God, abandoned even. She described it as a terrible darkness within me, as if everything was dead. But still, she showed up every day to wash wounds, to pray, to comfort, to care. She once wrote, "If you love until it hurts, there can be no more hurt, only more love." These women didn't care because it was painless. They cared despite the pain. Their stories remind us that pain isn't a sign to shut down. It's a reflection of what you're willing to risk for what matters most. Caring is costly, but it's also how meaning is born. So here's something to reflect on. Think of a moment that hurt more than you expected, a comment that stung, a silence that screamed, a setback that lingered. Now ask yourself, what did that pain reveal about what I care about most? It might not be obvious at first, but dig a little. Behind the sting is often something sacred. Pain doesn't mean that you're doing life wrong. It might mean that you're doing it right. If you want a life without pain, you'd have to stop caring, and that's a far greater loss. So let the pain remind you you're alive, you're connected, you're moving towards something that matters. Let it break you open, not shut you down, because pain isn't the enemy, it's the echo of your values, and your values are the beginning of everything. If this idea of noticing your thoughts without being ruled by them struck a chord, and you're someone who's tired of overthinking everything, tired of questioning your worth, tired of feeling like you've done the work, but you still feel stuck, you might be a perfect fit for my group program, The Fulfillment Formula. It's a 12-week therapy group for high-achieving women who are ready to stop living by anxiety, guilt, and perfectionism and start building a life that actually feels meaningful. We focus on the exact kinds of skills we talked about today, noticing your inner critic without obeying it, stepping out of old self-stories, and learning how to live from your values, not just your fear. It's evidence-based, deeply supportive, and built for women who are smart, self-aware, and still stuck. If that sounds like you can learn more. If that sounds like you can learn more and apply at my website, theantioptimisttherapist.com. Thanks for listening to the Anti Optimist Therapist. If this episode resonated with you, consider subscribing on Substack or sharing it with someone else who's navigating their own pain. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and remember the pain means that you still care.